It doesn't matter how many national parks Morgan and I visit, our wildlife encounters are always our favorite part. And surprisingly, Zion has a good amount of wildlife to see. So in this episode, I'll let you know what wildlife we saw, where we saw it, and I'll give you a few tips, so hopefully you can have an encounter of your own. But remember, weather, seasons, and even crowds can affect where the animals go, so wildlife encounters are never guaranteed. Of course, if you have a question about any of this, you can leave it in the comments. Before I get to the actual animals, we need to establish a couple ground rules. First, don't ever feed wildlife. If you feed an animal, they tend to come back for more, and they get too comfortable with people. If that animal attacks someone or bites someone, it will be, as the National Park Service says, destroyed. And I'm sure you don't want to be responsible for that. Second, you always want to keep a healthy distance between you and the animals. Park officials recommend 50 feet for small animals and 100 feet for the big guys. Of course, if you see a mountain lion, you probably want to be further than 100 feet away. Now let's talk about the animals. First, there's actually an opportunity to see wildlife just outside the park. Zion National Park does not have bison, but if you're on the east side of Zion between Mount Carmel and the east entrance, Zion Mountain Ranch has a herd of bison that graze right next to the road. The bison are normally visible throughout the day, and there are small pullouts on the side of the road to make it easy. Once you get into the park, you'll find a lot of little critters like ground squirrels and chipmunks. These guys are way too friendly, and they will literally try to steal your snacks. So stay vigilant and don't give in. If you're in Kolob Terrace or Kolob Canyons, you might see or hear coyotes. These districts were a little more remote and quiet, so they seemed a little more active than the main canyon. Kolob Terrace has also had a few black bear sightings in the last few years, but it's very rare. Zion Canyon has a lot of wildlife, but you'll mostly just see mule deer and birds. Birds range from quail to turkeys to falcons to woodpeckers. It really just depends on the day. Refrigerator Canyon is a little canyon on the way up to Angel's Landing. There are signs that say there are Spanish owls in the canyon, but I've never seen one, and I've been there too many times to count. So don't get too excited when you see the signs. Now, if you're really lucky, you might see a California condor. These birds are massive. They can weigh more than 20 pounds, and their wingspans can reach 10 feet. In 1982, there were only 22 California condors left in the wild, so the U.S. Fish and Game Service began an operation they called the California Condor Recovery Program, and there's been significant progress. As of 2023, there were 560 condors, with 347 of them living in the wild. California condors can cover hundreds of miles a day, so you have a chance of seeing them in most parts of the park, but there is a nesting pair in Zion Canyon. So it's a little more likely to see them in Zion Canyon, around Big Bend, and Angel's Landing. We spotted this guy while we were hiking the chain section, but sightings like this are rare. Before we move on, if you're getting value from this video, make sure to give it a like and leave a comment. It's a small thing you can do to help the channel grow. Mountain lions are the apex predator in Zion. They're stealthy, powerful, and you really don't want to encounter them at a close distance. They can really be found anywhere in Zion, but they tend to stay away from the crowds. Most sightings happen in Kolob Terrace and Kolob Canyons. Sightings are rare, but even if you don't see them, they're there. And I can speak from experience. I was hiking the Right Fork Trail by myself, and I never saw a mountain lion. But when I was headed back to the trailhead, my old boot prints were accompanied by mountain lion tracks. I literally followed the mountain lion tracks next to my old boot prints for 1/10 of a mile. Clearly, a mountain lion had been tracking me, and that was not a good feeling. To be fair, mountain lion attacks are incredibly rare. Solo hikers have the most encounters, and even those are rare. I always take bear spray just in case, although I've never had to use it. When it comes to wildlife, Zion's Bighorn Sheep are the crown jewel of the park. These sheep can be found throughout East Zion. Sometimes they're grazing on the cliffs, other times they're stopping traffic. But they're always fun to watch, particularly at different times of the year. The Bighorn Sheep rut lasts from August to October. During the rut, rams will be clashing on the cliffs to earn their right to mate. This is when their curled horns reach their biggest size. But my favorite season to see the Bighorn Sheep is lambing season. Lambing season goes from January to early May, and this is when the babies are born. You can normally spot them high in East Zion, jumping from cliff to cliff while they learn the ropes. And in case you're wondering, yes, they are adorable. I had my best luck finding Bighorn Sheep later in the afternoon. The sheep are normally on the move a couple hours before sunset, so it's a little easier to find them. I would just drive the Zion Mount Carmel Scenic Highway a couple times until I found them. Some days were easier than others, and nothing was ever guaranteed.